Long ago, during the golden age of the Oyo Empire, a vast and powerful kingdom ruled by the Alaafin king, a man named Bashorun Gaa rose to power. Though he was not a king by birth, nor a prince, he would come to wield more influence than any ruler before him. His name would be spoken in both fear and horror, and the story would be told for generations as a lesson on the dangers of unchecked ambition. The Oyo Empire was ruled by an Alaafin, but power was shared with the Oyomisi, a council of 7 noble chiefs who acted as both advisors and overseers of the king's rule. Among these chiefs, the most powerful was the Bashorun, the prime minister and head of the Oyomisi. It was the Bashorun who had the authority to order the king to commit suicide if he was deemed unfit to rule. Bashorun Gaa was born into a time when the Oyo Empire was governed more by its council than by its king. His rise to the position of prime minister was met with celebration, for he was known as a brilliant strategist, a fearless warrior, and a man with deep understanding of the mystical arts. His knowledge and wisdom and military prowess earned him respect among warriors, priests, and commoners alike. But behind his loyalty to the empire found a dangerous hunger for absolute power. At first, Bashorun Gaa appeared to be a faithful servant of the empire, ensuring justice and stability in the land. However, once he fully realized the extent of his power, he began to manipulate the political system to his advantage. The Oyomisi had the power to remove an Alaafin by presenting him with an empty calabash or a parrot's egg, a ritual symbolizing rejection by the gods. The condemned king would then be expected to commit suicide. This was a tool meant to ensure that the throne never fell into the hands of a weak or corrupt ruler. However, Bashorun Gaa exploited the system to eliminate kings who opposed him, effectively turning the Alaafins into mere puppets. One by one, he orchestrated the downfall of 4 Alaafins. Alaafin Labisi, who reigned during the 1750, the shortest reigned Alaafin in history, lasted only 17 days before he was pressured into taking his own life. Alaafin Awonbioju, 1750, reigned for 130 days. Gaa had him removed for refusing to bow to him. Alaafin Agboluaje, from 1750 to 1770, installed by Gaa himself, was later driven to despair when Gaa forced him into war with his own allies. Alaafin Majeogbe, from 1770 to 1772, attempted to resist Gaa, but was overpowered by his sons, who had grown into powerful warlords. By this time, Bashorun Gaa was no longer just a prime minister. He was the true ruler of Oyo. No decision could be made without his approval, and the Alaafins were nothing more than figureheads. His control over the empire was nearly absolute. Yet, it was not just his political influence that made him feared. It was the belief that he could not be killed. Gaa was rumored to possess supernatural powers, making him untouchable. He could transform into animals, making it impossible for enemies to track him. He could command spirits to do his bidding. He was said to be immune to weapons, protected by powerful charms and sacrifices. As his power grew, so did his cruelty. His rule became one of tyranny and terror. He executed anyone who opposed him, took the wives of kings as his own, and ruled through fear. The people of Oyo, who once admired his wisdom, now lived in constant fear of his wrath. As Bashorun Gaa's power grew, so did his cruelty. What had started as a cunning political maneuvering turned into outright tyranny. No one in Oyo was safe. Nobles, warriors, and even members of the Oyomacy, who had once supported him, now lived in fear of his wrath. To maintain his dominance, Gaa surrounded himself with fearsome warriors, many of whom were his sons, and raised to be ruthless and loyal to only him. These sons acted as warlords, ruling different parts of the empire on his behalf, collecting tributes and punishing any hint of disobedience. Gaa's hunger for power and pleasure knew no bounds. He took whatever he wanted: gold, land, and even women. The wives of foreign kings became his personal concubines, further humiliating the royal bloodline. But what made him truly feared was the dark rumors surrounding him. Many believed that Gaa had made a pact with dark spirits, granting him inhuman abilities. He could transform into animals, making it impossible to track him. He was said to be immune to weapons, protected by powerful charms. It was whispered that he sacrificed human lives, offering them to his deities in exchange for even more power. The people of Oyo, once proud and free, now lived in terror. No one dared oppose him, for they knew that death or worse awaited those who did. But even the most fearsome tyrants have their limits. As Bashorun Gaa's qualities increased, so did the whispers of rebellion. It was during the reign of Alaafin Abiodun from 1772 to 1789 that the tides began to turn against Bashorun Gaa. Unlike his predecessors, who were either weak or afraid, Abiodun was patient, intelligent, and calculating. He knew that if he openly challenged Gaa, he would suffer the same fate as the kings before him. Instead, he waited and watched, carefully gathering allies among those who secretly opposed Gaa's rule. As the years passed, cracks began to form in Gaa's empire of fear. Some of the Oyomacy, though still terrified, secretly supported the idea of removing him. The people of Oyo, tired of the suffering, began to pray for his savior. Even some of Gaa's former allies started to turn against him, fearing that his madness would destroy the entire empire. One night, Alaafin Abiodun summoned his most trusted warriors and whispered a single command: "The time has come." The plot to destroy Bashorun Gaa had begun. Despite all his power, Bashorun Gaa unknowingly planted the seeds of his downfall. His arrogance blinded him, and he failed to see the enemies growing in the shadows. Alaafin Abiodun, now confident in his secret alliances, struck the first blow. He began to spread false messages, pretending to offer peace to Bashorun Gaa, while secretly gathering his most loyal warriors to prepare for battle. But the final betrayal came from within Gaa's own household. One of Gaa's trusted sons, feeling neglected and afraid of sharing his father's fate, secretly switched sides. He revealed Gaa's weaknesses to Alaafin Abiodun, exposing the hidden charms and sacred objects that protected the tyrants. Armed with this knowledge, Abiodun and his forces prepared to strike. The day of reckoning arrived. Alaafin Abiodun's warriors, with the element of surprise, launched a fierce attack against Gaa's stronghold. The battle was brutal. Gaa's loyal warriors fought like demons, refusing to surrender, but the tide had turned, and for the first time, Bashorun Gaa was outmatched. Realizing he had been betrayed, Gaa tried to escape using his mystical abilities, but the charms that once protected him had been destroyed. His power was broken. Captured and bound in iron chains, the once feared Bashorun Gaa was dragged before the people of Oyo. The same people who once trembled at his name now spit at his feet. Alaafin Abiodun pronounced judgment. For your crimes against this kingdom, you shall suffer as you made others suffer. The execution was designed to be a warning for all. Gaa was tortured for days, his body stripped of all the magical protections he had once relied on. The people cut off his limbs one by one, making sure his death was slow and painful. Finally, his head was placed on a stake, displayed in the center of Oyo for all to see. The mighty tyrant was no more, but the fear of his spirit remained. Even after his death, legend spread that Gaa's restless soul still wandered in land, seeking revenge. Some claimed to see his shadow lurking in the forest, while others swore that his name alone could summon misfortune. Oyo had been freed, but the story of Bashorun Gaa would never be forgotten. With Bashorun Gaa dead, Oyo heaved a collective sigh of relief, but the scars of his reign could not be erased overnight. Many noble families who had lost their loved ones to Gaa's tyranny struggled to rebuild their lives. Warriors who had once served under Gaa in fear now sought to prove their loyalty to Alaafin Abiodun. The kingdom's political system was forever changed. Never again would the Bashorun be allowed to hold absolute power over the king. Alaafin Abiodun declared new laws, ensuring that no one like Gaa would ever rise again. The Oyomisis authority was weakened, giving future Alaafins more control. But one thing remained: the fear of Gaa's spirit. Some whispered that Gaa had not really died. There were tales of strange occurrences, crops failing, wild animals behaving strangely, shadows moving where no one should be. Some believed that his spirit still wandered, seeking revenge. To appease his restless soul, the people of Oyo performed grand sacrificial rituals, calling on the gods to banish his evil presence. But even then, his name was feared. For generations, parents would warn their children, do not grow too greedy for power, lest you end up like Bashorun Gaa. Despite his horrific downfall, Bashorun's legacy remained complex. Some saw him as a power-hungry tyrant, a man whose thirst for control led to his destruction. Others remembered him as a reformer, a man who had challenged the monarchy's unchecked rule and fought for the Oyomisis authority. His name became a warning and a lesson, the ultimate example of power's corruption. Even today, his story is told in Yoruba Nats, a tale of ambition, betrayal, and fate. But in the end, Bashorun Gaa did not just challenge kings, he challenged the gods themselves, and no one can defy fate forever.